Greetings and salutations, sports fans all across the wide and wonderful internet. Michael Shibley with you here, and we are continuing with our college football preview issue. We've gone through the other major conferences, and now we're hitting up my favorite conference, the one that my beloved Vols are still a part of, the SEC. So let's see who's going to take the crown in the Southeastern Conference. Also, we're going to preview my beloved Tennessee Vols, and we're also going to see who I think is going to be lifting that championship trophy when all is said and done across all of college football. So stick around, let's go. Starting off in the SEC East, I've got Georgia winning that division. JT Daniels, I think, was superb there at the end of the season for the Bulldogs, and I think that is going to continue now that he has had more time in that system. Of course, some of the question marks you might have for Georgia is, of course, losing their great wide receiver Pickens, who is out with an ACL injury. But we'll see if some of these other great recruits are going to be able to step up. They also have a really solid stable of running backs, but is one of them going to be the one to take the lead and be that primary back? Those are some of the questions on offense, but I don't think they have any questions at quarterback. I think Daniels is fine. The offensive line, of course, is solid. I haven't seen any problems with the Georgia offensive line under Kirby Smart. Their defensive line, they just keep rotating guys in and out. So I don't really see any problem with the front seven there with Georgia as well. One of the things I do kind of worry about is the secondary. You're going to have to see, are they going to be able to work well on that back end, because they did lose a couple of guys to the NFL draft. So that is definitely something to consider. And of course, the big thing is right at the start of the season, you're going to Charlotte to play Clemson. That is just an amazing game. Two top 5 teams starting off the season. Can Georgia afford to lose that? Yeah, but then of course the margin for error is much less at that point. Maybe, depending on if you still win the division and then win the SEC championship game, most likely against Alabama, are you really going to have a chance to then make the playoff? If they beat Clemson, they've got a little more room to work with, but I still think Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs are going to get it done in the East. When you look at the rest of the Eastern Division, you've got, of course, some teams behind them. Florida is the most likely contender to go after Georgia, but I think Georgia is really much above Florida, especially because Florida's got to replace the two Kyles, Kyle Pitts and Kyle Trask. Both had phenomenal seasons there with the Florida Gators. They also, of course, have just 9 returning starters total, which is pretty low when you look at some of the other SEC teams. And of course, the huge question is, how good is Emory Jones, the guy tabbed to be the new starting quarterback there at Florida? And something huge that's going to be an early test for this Florida Gator team is that Alabama comes calling on September 18th. Meanwhile, you look at the rest of the SEC, just a real quick rundown of what I think these teams are going to do. Missouri, I think, again, a solid team, and they've got a great quarterback, I think, in Connor Bazelak. He's very solid, but I just don't think there's enough talent around to move Missouri into the upper echelon of the SEC. Kentucky, the Wildcats have had probably their best head coach in Mark Stoops since Bear Bryant was there. Really, when you talk about consistency and being a winning program, I think Mark Stoops has instilled a lot of that there in Lexington. It's right now they just don't have that solid quarterback play, which has really been their problem. You get an all-around great quarterback in Kentucky, they're going to take you forever. If you had Tim Couch from back in the late 90s there at Kentucky with the coaching that Mark Stoops has, Kentucky is contending for an SEC title, but you just haven't gotten it all together. So I think Kentucky, again, has a shot to be good, but not great again this season. You also look at South Carolina. They've got a new coach in Shane Beamer. Running back Kevin Harris can only do so much. It's going to be a tough rebuild there in Columbia. And another tough rebuild is also in Nashville with Vanderbilt, where, again, they got rid of their coach. And you kept thinking, man, things are going to be okay, especially by Vanderbilt standards, but they went 0-10 last year, and it was just boring, to be quite frank, watching Vanderbilt games. So you move on, you hire an alum in Clark Lee. He knows how tough that job is. Meanwhile, you do have at least one piece. You've got a really good quarterback. I think Ken Seals is a real talent. He might not be Jay Cutler level when you talk about great Vanderbilt quarterbacks, but I think he could be a real fine one. So you look at all of that, all those great talents that you have in this league, but they just don't have the great teams around them. That's why, to me, I still have the Georgia Bulldogs winning the SEC East. Moving over to the SEC West, and it is all about the defending national champions, the Crimson Tide of Alabama. It's Nick Saban. He has just plugged in everybody he's lost. There's just new 5-star talents just coming down to Tuscaloosa. He's got enough parade All-Americans to hold a parade. That's just how it goes there. The rich just keep getting richer with Nick Saban at the helm. Now, again, you still see some of these question marks. These guys do not have the playing experience and the guys who left, but they're still very, very talented. And Nick Saban, of course, is probably the greatest coach we've ever had in college football. That will be a debate for another video, but it is true. Alabama has just been phenomenal. I love what Nick Saban does as a head coach. It infuriates me as a Tennessee fan because Tennessee hasn't beaten him at Alabama, but that's what you got. You got to finally beat the man, and no one has really been able to do that consistently there in the SEC. You do have a new quarterback in Bryce Young, and again, I think he's going to do great. He's got that great system around him. Is he going to be an all-timer like everybody else who's come through with Alabama, like what Mac Jones did last year? We're going to have to wait and see. He's got enough endorsements already with the name, image, and likeness. He's got probably $1 million worth of endorsement deals, so hats off to you, young fella, for getting that done. But again, Alabama, all the talent that they're going to continue to have, no matter how many players leave, they're always going to be that top dog in the SEC West. Who is finally going to be able to knock them off? Of course, they also have, not only are all the great recruits, but they also have one of my former Vols, Henry To'o, our best defensive player, left to go over to Alabama. So they just keep getting more great talent, and Alabama is known for their great linebackers. So that is going to continue. And of course, you do have a new offensive coordinator with Bill O'Brien. How is that going to change? We'll just have to see. But again, I'm just going to go, it's that comfort food. It's that comfort blanket when you come for picking a team to win. You're just going to keep going with old reliable until they prove otherwise. And to me, that's Alabama. The best team that has a chance to knock them off is Texas A&M. You finally are going to have to see, is all that money they've been paying Jimbo Fisher to win championships, not just to come close, but it's to win championships. Is that going to pay off? They have a great opportunity to do that. October 9th, Alabama comes to College Station. And of course, they've got that one circled many, many times. Just how many times on the schedule have they circled that one? Jimbo Fisher's going to have to remind everybody they still have 5 games to play before that game. Now, they are all very winnable games, but they still got to go out and do it. And you still have great weapons there. Running back Isaiah Spiller is just a wonderful running back. It's a very talented group of skill position players. But can Texas A&M find a quarterback to replace Kellen Mond, who did so much for Jimbo Fisher and that group? So that's going to be the thing. I really want to pick Texas A&M to win the Western Division. I just can't pull the trigger. They're going to have to prove me wrong with Alabama. You're just going to have to go up and show it to me, to be perfectly honest. And that's why I'm picking Alabama over Texas A&M. When you run down the rest of the SEC West, you still have some very talented teams. The West has been much better than the East this season. At least that's how I feel. The records may show otherwise as we finish the season, but at least everything on paper, it's looking like it's going to be the SEC West. It's going to be better than the SEC East. You've got LSU, who a lot of people think could be a contender, even a dark horse pick for the playoff. They do have so much talent, but they're coming off such a bad season last year. And again, how much of that was COVID? How much of that was just bad luck? We'll kind of see. you do have Coach O made a lot of changes to his coaching staff, and it's going to have to pay off. And they have a tough test heading up this week, week 1, against UCLA in the Rose Bowl. UCLA has already played a game. They beat Hawaii and beat them soundly, so maybe Chip Kelly has finally got things going out west. But LSU heading out there, we'll see where things are. You're going to get a lot of evidence, and you're going to see really how good LSU is just on that one game. You move over to Auburn, where Brian Harrison came over from Boise State to lead War Eagle. He's got a lot of talent. It's not like some of these other rebuilding jobs that we have seen in the SEC. There's a lot of talent there, including, of course, Tank Bigsby, who is a just wonderful running back. I love watching that kid run. But again, it's going to take a lot to really break into the upper echelon there in the SEC West. You look at Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin is leading a great Ole Miss Rebel team, at least on one side of the ball. Quarterback Matt Corral can pitch it everywhere. He is an amazing talent. He's probably the best, at least, returning quarterback on paper that you have in the SEC. Now, can you get a defense to go along with everything that Lane Kiffin's got? We'll have to see. Mississippi State, Mike Leach teams seem to historically do better in year number 2 in his system. But again, one of the things I still think you have to do in the SEC, it might not work as much with the air raid system, but I still think you have to run the ball at least a little bit to do some stuff and take some pressure off of that passing game, maybe run a little bit of clock in the SEC because there's so much talent compared to other places Mike Leach has been. But I still think that Mississippi State is going to be a better team this year than they were last year. And at the bottom, and again, they're not as far on the bottom as, say, Vanderbilt or South Carolina in the SEC East. You've got Arkansas at the bottom of the SEC West. Sam Pittman really had Arkansas playing hard. They won 3 games, including beating my beloved Vols, and they were a bad call away from beating Auburn. They had some other close calls as well. So really, you can see that the Razorbacks are going to play hard under Sam Pittman. Now, is it going to translate into more wins? I don't really see that just because of all the other talent you've got in that SEC West division. So when all the dust is settled, who's going to be my winners? I've got Alabama winning the West, even though Texas A&M is going to give it their best shot. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, out east, I've got Georgia winning that division. When they meet in Atlanta for the championship game, I think both teams have a really good shot of being undefeated or maybe having one loss. And just to surprise some of you people, I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb here. We'll just kind of have to see. I think Clemson is going to beat Georgia to open the year, but I think Georgia wins out, and I think Georgia is actually going to beat Alabama in Atlanta in the SEC championship game. But I do also think that both of those teams, Alabama and Georgia, make the college football playoff. Before I make my pick of who's going to win the college football playoff, I did want to take a few minutes and talk about my beloved Tennessee Vols and what I think is going to happen with them this season. Oh, boy, I'm hoping for the best, to be perfectly honest. It has been rough here on Rocky Top since 2008. Tennessee is on their 5th head coach since Philip Fulmer got forced out as head coach. And now we've got Josh Heupel, which I like. I'm totally fine with the hire. I know a lot of people are wondering maybe we could get someone a little more well-known or a bigger name. But again, you've got the NCAA violations coming over from what Jeremy Pruitt might have done. We'll see how that investigation goes. But I like what he does. He brings up tempo. I tell you one thing, Tennessee, no matter what the record's going to be this season, I don't think it's going to be boring. That was one thing that happened last season. Even with all the expectations going into the season, besides the South Carolina game to start the season, every other game that Tennessee played was boring. By the start of the 4th quarter, all the games were pretty much over, no matter if Tennessee had won or lost them. There was no drama at all. And one thing with Josh Heupel, it's not going to be boring. So when we look at everything with Tennessee, you look at the depth chart and you look, and again, we had players leave. Tuo left to go to Alabama. You had all the guys leave to go to Oklahoma. You had Jarrett Garantano leave as quarterback and go to Washington State. You've got all these guys, but we'll see who's left. And you also have some transfers coming in. And we're starting at quarterback, where you have former Michigan quarterback Joe Milton III. He's now your starter over Virginia Tech transfer Hendon Hooker and Harrison Bailey. We'll see, again, if that lasts all season. We've heard a lot of good things about Milton, but again, he was inconsistent at Michigan. We'll see. I think he fits the system. It seems like the coaching staff really likes him, so I'm high on him. Meanwhile, you look at the rest of the depth chart. You've got Tyon Evans and Jabari Small at running back, a nice 1-2 punch. I think you've got Velus Jones Jr. and Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman leading the wide receiver core, that they're just going to rotate everybody in and out. Meanwhile, on the offensive line, you've got the Mays brothers along with Darnell Wright, who again form a solid core. Now, the depth is going to be an issue. Meanwhile, the big question is going to be on defense. I think Josh Heupel, they're going to score points, but just like Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, are they going to be able to stop anybody? And that's what you look at, because in the SEC, you do have to play some defense. Actually, you got to play usually great defense to win a championship, and we'll see. We're not maybe at the championship level yet, but I still think Tennessee has some pieces to at least be okay on defense. The front seven, of course, is going to be the biggest question. You do have guys like transfers Byron Young. Elijah Simmons has been a really good run stopper. It looks like he's emerged as a good one there. The linebackers, who knows? You lost 2-0-2 and you lost Couch. So those are some of the guys that were really the core of that linebacking group. But you look, they couldn't defend the slant pattern at all season long. The linebackers were just awful there, and we're going to have to see. The secondary, I think, is going to be the strength of the defense. They have a lot of experience back there, but what you run into is, can they work together? That's going to be the big thing. They have to work well as a unit, but you've got guys at every level, especially because Tennessee's probably going to run 5 DBs for a lot of these formations. You look at Alontae Taylor, Warren Burrell, Theo Jackson, Jalen McCullough, and Trayvon Flowers. So you've got a good number one. It's just everybody else there. Are they all going to bring it all together and make it winnable and passable here in the SEC? You look at the schedule. The schedule sets up okay for Tennessee. Really, you look at the non-conference games, you've got Bowling Green here to start the season. Heck, it is in a couple of days as we are filming this video. Tennessee taking on the Falcons of BGSU. That should be a win. The real test is going to come to see the barometer of how this season's going to go is going to be on September 11th, that Saturday, against Pittsburgh. That's the test. If Tennessee looks well in that game, I can have a little bit more optimism. If they lose that game, then it's just going to be another, oh boy, I hope the bottom doesn't completely fall out again, just like it did in 2020. But what I think is going to happen, you look at everything, I've got wins against Bowling Green, Pitt, and Tennessee Tech to open the season. But then you look at that middle of the season, that's where you run into problems, because on the back end, I've got wins against South Alabama and Vanderbilt. So that's 5 wins, but you need 6 to get to a bowl game. So where's that 6th win going to come from? I don't see it at Florida. I don't see it against Ole Miss, at Alabama, at Kentucky, against Georgia. You've got Missouri, but I think Missouri right now is a little bit better team. So that South Carolina game in the middle of October, that could be your linchpin to be, hey, where's Tennessee going to go? So those barometer games against Pitt, South Carolina are going to have the real shot of if Tennessee has a true chance of going bowling. At least that's my opinion. I want to know, of course, what you guys all think, especially my Vol fans out there. I know you're watching. Let me know in the comments section below. Now let's wrap this video up and let me tell you who I think is going to win the national championship. I already mentioned in this video I have Alabama and Georgia both coming in representing the SEC. I also have Clemson and Oklahoma. All teams who have been in the college football playoff before. Nobody new I'd see rising up to kick that door in. That's just what I think is going to happen. And then in the finals, I've got the 2 teams with more experienced quarterbacks. I've got Georgia and I've got Oklahoma in that matchup. I think, again, you've got JT Daniels, you have Spencer Rattler being the ones who are going to carry their teams and have that experience to get the win in the championship game. And then I am sorry to all my Georgia fans, but I just think Oklahoma has more experience. I think, again, Spencer Rattler probably is the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy right now. I think Oklahoma gets the win and breaks Georgia's heart again. I could be wrong. For some of you Georgia fans who I'm friends with, I hope I'm wrong for your sake. Let me know in the comments section. I want to hear what you guys think, but I do have Oklahoma winning the national championship. That's going to wrap up this episode of Shibbles and Bits with all the college football previews. Thank you guys so much for watching. And again, if you like what I'm doing, please give us a thumbs up down there. Give us a subscription. If you guys do that, I would love you forever. And of course, you can catch me streaming video games, especially with my wife, Mrs. Shibbles, on Twitch at twitch.tv/shibblesandbits. And you can follow me on Twitter at Michael_Shibley for everything else going on in the world of sports. Thank you guys so much again for watching. Too sweet. Love you. Go Vols. The season is here. I'll see you next time.